I've bought a lot of watches from AliExpress in the past, and I intend to buy more watches from AliExpress in the future. And throughout these purchases and learning about the watches that you can buy from AliExpress and seeing the watches that are coming out now, I've developed a little bit of a system of 5 rules that I utilize every single time I make a watch purchase from AliExpress. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and I'm talking about the 5 rules that I apply to myself every single time I buy a watch from AliExpress. And I've found that as I've developed these rules for myself, I've ended up having good buying experiences from this online platform. AliExpress is an amazing place to buy things, but you do have to be a little bit careful because there are lots of different sellers on there. There's some good sellers, there's bad sellers, there's big sellers, small sellers. And if you just pay attention prior to making that purchase, there's a very good chance you'll end up with a very good watch on the way to you in the mail. And the first rule that I generally apply to myself, and I say generally because I've a couple of times not applied this rule and still ended up with a good watch, but I'm very careful if I choose not to apply this rule, and that is to buy from an established store with good feedback, with lots of reviews, something that you think you can trust when you look at them. Specifically, I really like the stores where they have reviews of their products, especially their watches that are being sold. And they're beyond just reviews, there is also photos. People, when they buy watches, they can leave a review, I always do, and they can post photos of the watch that has arrived. So you are looking at the actual product that you are likely to receive when you order it. Not these nice studio photos or renders, you actually get to see some real life photos of these watches. And you're buying from a store that has a lot of good feedback, it has good experience on the store, and you are very likely to end up with the watch that you are purchasing. But when I am on AliExpress and I'm looking for watches and I find something that I like, but I have some questions, I then apply my second rule because I want to know all the things about the watch before buying them, and I want to make sure that I have the right information. And sometimes, and generally it's because of the translation issue, sometimes when you're reading through the listing on AliExpress, it may not be exactly clear, so I ask questions. There is a message service built in within AliExpress, and it's very easy to use. It's like just sending them a text message, and you can ask them any question that you want. You can ask for photos, you can ask for dimensions, you can ask for all sorts of things, and that's exactly what I do if I have any questions or any doubts. And most stores get back to you. Most stores get back to you with the information and even photos. And when they don't, or if they look like they're trying to mislead you, well then I just move away from that store and perhaps look somewhere else. And then there's a rule that I always applied to myself, but that I'm changing now. I had the rule that I would spend a maximum of 300 Australian dollars, because for me, if I'm spending more than $300, well, I can start thinking about other watches, non-AliExpress watches, and perhaps money that is greater than $300 is probably better off spent elsewhere. But now with all the new amazing watches coming out of AliExpress that tend to be $400 or $500, well, I've changed my mind a little bit. I've changed my mind in regards to that amount depending on the watch. I still have this sort of $300 threshold, which I don't mind spending on AliExpress watches. But when I'm going to spend more than that, it needs to depend on the watch and also partly on the movement. Because if I'm going to be spending $500 on a watch, I really like the idea of maybe getting like a Highbeat 9000 series Miyota, which is definitely available and definitely in that price range and unlikely to be available in other watches away from AliExpress. So for me, I have this rule of $300 depending on the watch, and part of that decision is also depending on the watch movement. Sorry to interrupt the video, guys, but I'm just really hoping that if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, that you could possibly just hit on that subscribe button. Subscribing to this channel makes a massive, massive difference to me. I don't think anybody quite realizes how much of a difference it makes to me and this channel. And there's a number of reasons why, but one of the best parts about you subscribing is that it costs you absolutely nothing, and it could be your good deed for the day. Thank you very much. Let's get back to this video. But no matter what watch I am looking at, no matter what price range of watch I'm looking at on AliExpress, I always do a little bit of research about them. And this is my next rule of buying watches from AliExpress. And it's a rule that I sort of apply to most watches that I'm buying, that I'm going to look at reviews of these watches, both online written reviews and sort of video reviews like I make. Now, I do listen to the people that are writing these reviews or talking to me about the watch that they have in front of them, but what I'm mostly doing is I'm looking at the pictures and the videos. I want to see these watches in a real life scenario, not just these nice photos that these listings have put on AliExpress. It's one of the reasons why when I do reviews of watches, I try to show the watches the best that I can in different lights, in different circumstances, inside, studio, outside, so that if you're thinking about buying one of the watches that I'm showing, that you get to see it in as much detail and different lighting circumstances. That's the reason why I make the reviews like I do. And that's what I do when I'm looking to buy watches from AliExpress myself. My final rule that I apply to myself is more of actually asking myself a question, and it's a question that I ask myself in regards to almost every watch purchase I make. I look at the watch that I'm looking at, I look at the price of the watch that I'm looking at, and I ask myself this question: for the same money, what other watch could I buy, both within AliExpress and outside of AliExpress? Because I know sometimes I see a watch and I get a little bit tunnel vision on it. So I do try to break away from that, because often I might find another watch at the same price, both on AliExpress or even off AliExpress, that I prefer more. So I always ask myself that question: for the same amount of money, is there another watch that I would prefer to buy? Now, I've called these my rules for buying watches on AliExpress, but really it's more about just more of an understanding and things to sort of consider before making purchases on this particular platform. And it's worthwhile doing because as I applied these rules to myself, I've ended up with good purchases. I've ended up with watches that I really like and that I enjoy, that I have in my collection. And I've had very, very few negative experiences on AliExpress. And if you'd like to see some of the watches that I've bought, well, here's a couple of AliExpress watch reviews that I've done.